Today we're interviewing John C. Scott of Watervliet, Michigan, and the interviewer is Michael McGregor with the Grand Valley State University's Veterans Oral History Project. John, beginning, when and where were you born?
I was born in Watervliet, Michigan, 1971, March.
1971. Describe growing up in Watervliet. What did you do and things like that?
My grandparents owned a farm, and we lived out by Lake Michigan Beach, so most of the time I spent with my grandparents growing up, growing up on the farm, driving tractors and learning to shoot and, having a pretty good time.
Did you attend high school at Watervliet?
Nope, I actually went to Coloma High School until about 8th grade, then I switched to Covert High School, which is, about 10 miles away, and then graduated from there.
Okay, and what year did you graduate?
1989.
1989. And during high school, were you thinking about entering the military, or?
A little bit on and off. The recruiters back then, they were pretty thick on the high school students. We took our ASVAB while we were at high school, which I don't know if they do that anymore, but yeah, I think that's probably when I decided, or at least I kind of knew what I was going to do for the rest of my life.
Oh, okay.
My parents, my dad was a Navy guy. Both my grandparents served in one was in the Army, then the other one was in the Navy, so I'm just trying to keep that lineage going.
Okay. So you got out of school, and then what did you do?
Right out of school and joined right into the Marine Corps.
Why did you select the Marine Corps?
My cousin was in at the time, and he was a Marine. He got out. He probably joined maybe 2 or 3 months before I did. Then I got to see kind of what he went through, and they're a little bit different on like their boot camp and their programs for like shooting, and a little more strict, I would say. So that's what kind of geared me toward that.
Okay, and where did you do your basic training?
I did my basic training in San Diego.
Okay, now describe that process for us when you first got there until you got out.
When you first get there, I had long hair. I think I weighed like 128 pounds. You get there and you come off the bus, and they got these, there's a whole line of yellow footprints. And you get on the yellow footprints. Before you even get to the yellow footprints, you got a drill instructor just screaming bloody murder at you. So it's kind of shell shock. And once you get out there, you all get lined up on the footprints, and while they're still screaming at you, and then they shuffle everybody in. First thing you do is get all your hair shaved off, so you look, everybody looks the same. And then right into, you get your gear, and I don't know, it was probably 36 hours of nonstop yelling and getting all your stuff squared away.
How did you react to the yelling?
I was a little shell shocked at first, but I blended in pretty good. I mean, I'm sure there was times when I was going through boot camp where you'd almost like pinch yourself just to see if it was real. Am I really here? Because in San Diego you're stuck on the San Diego airport's right across the other side. So when you go out and you do PT every day, or you're shooting or whatever you're doing there, you can watch all the civilian planes taking off. So it was kind of cruel and unusual punishment, I should say.
Yeah.
But
okay,
it was nice.
What did the basic training consist of there in San Diego?
A lot of PT, a lot of drill, close quarter marksmanship, combatives. I think that's about it. A little bit of swimming. Got to learn how to swim with a rucksack on your back.
Okay.
It was kind of exciting.
And then did you have to go elsewhere for your rifle range?
Yeah, they sent us over to Camp Pendleton, which is probably, I'm guessing, maybe a couple hours away. And they sent us up there, and we'd stay up there for, I think it was a little over a week. And that's all we did was shoot that whole week. And then when you're done with that, and you come back, and then you still do more drill and ceremony, you get used to doing that, get fitted for your dress blues, then you go through the whole graduation process. And then after that, you get to go to Marine combat training, which is a little bit different than the Army. So they send you over there, and then they train you more on like small unit tactics, infantry skills.
Back in my day, they used to call that ITR. Is it still,
ITR?
Is it still called ITR?
No, MCT, Marine combat training.
Okay. How long did that last?
That was 4 weeks there.
Okay. And that was conducted where? At Pendleton?
Camp Pendleton. We did 4 weeks there, and then at the end of those 4 weeks, some of the soldiers got to leave and go to their MOS schools. And then for the infantry guys like me, they took and marched us from the MCT ground about a quarter mile over to our new home. So we never got to leave. We go from one right into the School of Infantry, which is roughly 8 weeks, I think it was.
Did you enlist specifically for infantry, or didn't you know where they were going to put you?
No, I
when you
enlisted
joined?
for infantry.
Okay.
Yeah, guaranteed infantry.
Okay. Why did you choose that?
I wanted something in my life that would give me a challenge, and I figured, you know, the infantry would be the most challenging of them all. And I don't know, more, give me a little bit more pride in myself.
Okay.
You know, you got to start at that lowest point and build up. You know, maybe looking at it now, maybe I should have picked something with a little bit better job skill. It didn't really help me out none.
Okay, looking back on basic training, was it, how did you adjust to the physical requirements of it?
Like I said, I was probably 128 pounds when I went in. So I was a pretty scrawny kid. I always loved sports, so we usually run 3 to 5 miles a day. So I blended in, you know, the first week or so, I mean, it was a little rough, but I was a pretty good runner at that time. You know, and it wasn't bad. I was skinny. The push-ups, the pull-ups, they come pretty natural to me. And then I think by the time I graduated boot camp, I weighed, I don't know, 182 pounds. So
so you gained about 40 pounds.
Yeah,
huh?
they packed it on me pretty fast.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so you basic, you did your initial combat training that
Right.
all Marines go through, right,
Yep.
regardless of MOS. And then they put you right to the infantry school, or did they assign you to a unit?
No, they send you right to the School of Infantry.
Okay.
Walk you over there, and then they pretty much start all over again. You get to shoot all the weapons. You're back to drill and ceremony. A lot more ruck marching, a lot more running. You know, a little bit more conditioning.
How long did that last?
I think it was roughly 8 weeks.
8 weeks. So when you say you shoot all the weapons, what would that be? All the company level weapons, or?
Yeah, all the company level weapons, and we even got into like the anti-tank guns, like the SMAW, and wire guided missiles like the Dragons and stuff like that. So it was very interesting.
Okay. Okay. So after your infantry training, where were you assigned?
I got stationed out of Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii, 3rd Marines. So that was kind of nice. But being, you know, growing up in a small community where I grew up at, I mean, I never really went anywhere from home. I think my first plane ride was to boot camp, and my second plane ride was going to Hawaii. So it was nice, beautiful place is definitely paradise.
Before Hawaii, after your training, did you have any leave home?
Yep, I got to come home for roughly maybe 10 days, right around there.
Okay.
And then I got shipped right back over to Hawaii, which was, I enjoyed it there.
Okay, so you were assigned to what unit within the 3rd Marine Division were you assigned to?
It was an infantry company, 3rd Battalion, and it was nice. I got there, a little shell shock getting there, you know, you're the new guy. You go through the whole in-processing session, which is roughly about a week, and then they finally get you into your unit. And I think within a month when I first got there, I was right around Desert Shield, Desert Storm, so we geared right up and, you know, transferred right into Saudi Arabia, and we started that.
Okay, so you were, right after you joined your unit, you were mobilized, I guess not really mobilized isn't the right word, but you were transferred to, how did you get to Saudi Arabia? And did you have any special training before you got there, or what happened?
Really no special training at all. I mean, we flew Aloha Airlines and went right in. I mean, that's all we really do in the infantry it's all we train is small unit tactics, guns. So we were pretty much trained out before we even left.
So you went from Hawaii to Saudi. What route did you go?
Up through, we stopped at Germany.
Okay.
And I want to say, well, I know Germany we stopped at for sure, and we stopped at one other place. I wanted maybe Iceland, Greenland, Iceland,
Just refueling stops?
Yeah.
Or- yeah.
just refueling.
So you got to Saudi Arabia. Where did you land in Saudi Arabia, do you know?
No. Whatever major airport was there, we landed there. I don't know, it was roughly probably 120 degrees outside. Then you get to go out and unload all your own gear on the tarmac. So, you know, being on that tarmac, it felt like it was 180 degrees outside. And we go right from there, and they sent us, I don't know, I think we spent a week at this camp where there was a lot of Marines there. And then we split it from there into our individual units, you know, compared to what we were tasked for, and then went across the border.
What was going through your mind when you were there?
No, a lot of it is like our platoon sergeant. He was a pretty hard guy, and I was a machine gunner at the time. And you know, he'd always tell us, you know, the infantry guys only had, especially a machine gunner, had like it was either 4 or 7 seconds to live after you started firing. I mean, that's what he always instilled in us. So I mean, it was pretty scary at first, and then you really just have your buddies that are next to you, and then you're just wondering, you know, you just got to fight to the end, and hopefully somehow you'll make through it.
Okay, so you landed, then you went out someplace else, and then you said you crossed the border.
Yeah.
Was that the beginning?
Kuwaiti
of,
border.
Was that the beginning of Desert Storm then, or
Yep.
Okay?
We actually, when we crossed the border, they took and piled all the infantry guys in the back of these 5 tons with all of our gear, you know, our laws, all our hand grenades, rifles, and they stuck us all in 5 tons and drove us right across the border. You can see where the tanks went through there, and because they had a berm that went almost all the way around Kuwait, where they dug that berm out, and as you went through there, you could see the minefields that the Iraqis laid down, and you could just see them for miles. It looked like somebody just went out there and put a mine on top of the sand and just left it.
Okay.
So that was a little different.
So you crossed the border in 5-ton trucks, and then did you deploy someplace, or what happened then?
We crossed the border. We kept driving. We had no idea where. At least you know the young guys had no idea where we were at. We ended up stopping at almost looked like a village, maybe a burnt down or a tore down village. It had like one building, a couple little like nomad shacks. And then we stayed there. We ended up getting stuck on POW guard because everybody we'd run into, we'd even have people driving up to us and tracked vehicles hanging off, you know, a white flag up the top of it.
Surrendering to
Oh
you?
yeah, surrendering left and right. So we got stuck doing that. I still remember the day when they caught all the oil fields on fire.
Mm-hmm.
That was I don't know, maybe 30-something hours of nothing but darkness. I mean, you couldn't see, you know, 2 inches in front of you, and we were stuck outside. When we were living on our, you know, little bivouacs, our shelter halves, which were pretty small. But I can remember when it finally cleared up. You know, we're looking around and you could see all these little black specks on your uniform. It was all the oil that was kind of drifting around in the sky, and it was different.
Just all the soot too and
Yeah.
everything, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got to this village, so your unit got assigned a POW,
Yep.
I guess processing, guarding, whatever. Was it the whole company, or was it the whole
No,
battalion?
Just
or?
the whole company.
Okay.
And what we'd do is we'd take them and we'd strip them down, search them, feed them, and then we'd, you know, once we get a bunch of them, we'd stick them in the back of a 5-ton, usually a Marine up top, armed guard, and then we would just keep transferring them out. As they'd fill up, we'd just transfer them over.
Okay, and the stream was pretty steady with the.
Very steady.
What was your impression of the Iraqi soldiers?
I mean, a little confusing at first because, I mean, some of those prisoners that we would search, I mean, they spoke English probably better than some of us, maybe even better than me. I mean, when you'd search them, when you would see like Chicago driver's license and, you know, stuff like that, it makes you, I was wondering, I'm like, well, holy crap, what happened? Well, at that time, I guess they were at, you know, they'd come home to visit, and once the war started, they got drafted right into the military and stuck them right on the front lines.
Without much training?
Right.
Or
I think
were they previous service when they
No,
came
no,
back?
no training, no service at all, and I think that's why you had so many people giving up at that time.
Mhm. So the whole time during the the Desert Storm thing, you were then just processing prisoners?
Yep.
Taking prisoners, okay. Did you ever get into Kuwait City then?
No, just on the outside. Never got to go on the inside. They kept us pretty busy on the outside with all the giving up. And
How many prisoners would you say your company processed through?
at least 3,000 or 4,000.
Wow.
Yeah, it was.
Did you find anything interesting among the prisoners, or?
No, other than seeing, like United States, like Chicago driver licenses
Right.
and stuff like that, nothing out of the ordinary. It was kind of odd seeing, like, coming up to that spot before we even got to the EPOW guard, is seeing the tanks, our old tanks that the Iraqis had, and seeing those blowed up by the TOW missile systems, and, scavenging through stuff. Brought a couple things home, set up binoculars, maybe I think it was a flash suppressor off of a M60 tank. So yeah.
Oh, they had M60s, the
Yeah.
Iraqis?
Yeah,
did?
the old
Okay.
tanks,
I thought they had a lot of Russian stuff too.
Russian and our stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
M60. Yeah. That would, because at that time I think the Marines just had M60s. I don't think they had Abrams then.
No,
Did they?
No, that was before
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But it seems like wherever we go, we always seem to arm the people that we're getting ready to fight, and then we get to go and police everything back up. And it's how it usually ends up.
Were these prisoners, were they grateful to be processed by, or they just said, hey, we don't want to get shot, we're just...
No, I think they were grateful, because it almost looks like they just stuck them right there out in the field. I mean, some of those little spider traps and little holes that, they just dig up, and they put, little pieces of thin metal on top of it, and that would be their bunker. Or they'd be stuck in a track somewhere. And then back then, I mean, with the A-10s flying around, and yeah, you're going to give up, because either that or you're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Those things are pretty brutal. I mean, just at night watching, the air campaign take off before we even got to leave to go there, it was pretty tremendous.
Were you, well, before you were in Saudi Arabia, were you close by an air base where you could watch that, or?
No, not by the air base. You could never see them take off, but it almost looked like every night there was a storm, and you could see the bombs blowing up. It's like
Okay.
the flashes of lightning.
Oh, okay.
During the
On
day,
the horizon,
yeah.
yeah.
During the
Okay.
day, you could see like flight formations flying through, but we
Okay.
never got to see them take off or anything.
Okay. So the hostilities ended, and what happened with your unit? What did you do then?
Once the hostilities ended, I mean, it took a little while before we actually got to come back to, we'll say, cantonment, and that was somewhere in Saudi Arabia. And at that time, we got to go use the phones, talk to the family, because before that, we really had no communication at that time. You get to stand in line for a couple hours, try to get you a cheeseburger or a little taste of home. And after that, maybe a week or 2 weeks there, and then we got to come back to Hawaii. I think we flew FedEx back.
Okay. How just interestingly, how did the cheeseburger taste?
That's probably one of the best cheeseburgers you ever had in your life.
Okay.
Yeah, it was very good. Well worth the wait in line.
Okay, that's good. So now you came back to Hawaii. How long were you gone for from Hawaii? Yes.
Roughly 15 months.
Oh, okay. So you were in.
We were there for quite a while.
You were there. So what were you after the hostilities? And what did you do? Just garrison there, or?
EPOW guard. Once we transferred out of that, it was more of the garrison. Then we got to the point where we were breaking down like the AHA points and moving equipment back to the port to start shipping it back home.
Okay, so that was so you had a full 15, 16 months
Yes.
there. Well, what did you do during your time there? I know you're pretty busy, working, but how did the troops keep entertained? Because entertainment wasn't as prevalent by our standards
No,
as
not at all.
as we would hope.
And you were lucky to get to go to the PX. I was a smoker back then too, so I mean, just even getting your cigarettes, a lot of the stuff you relied on people sending from home.
Okay.
Reading was probably the best thing, or playing, rummy with the guys. But that's probably the time where I've read the most books in my life. I had to have something to keep my mind preoccupied.
Did you have much interaction with the Saudi Arabian population?
No, hardly any at all. The only interaction we'd have is from, the Iraqi population. other than that.
And that would be the prisoners,
Right.
right? Yeah. How long were they kept prisoner before they were repatriated back?
Well, at our spot, they would usually stay there 3, 4, or 5 days.
Okay.
And then once they get transferred over, there's no telling where they went.
Okay, so you had no interaction with the prisoners when you were back in Saudi Arabia
No,
doing
no.
those things?
Yeah, we don't even know where they went.
Okay. How would you characterize the morale of your unit when you were there?
I would say pretty high. I mean, you get around a bunch of infantry guys, they find, different ways to amuse themselves. And, I mean, it's a pretty tight-knit group of people. When you get to the point where you're willing to give your life up to, maybe save one of your buddies or for the greater good, I mean, it changes a lot of things.
Okay, was there any morale issues while you were, in the period of time when you're back in Saudi Arabia processing the equipment and that kind of thing? Or?
You had a little bit in there because a lot of it too is, some of the older guys, some of the older Marines, if they were supposed to ETS, supposed to get out of the service. Well, if you were over there, that ETS date just got pushed back until we all came back.
You got stop loss or
Right.
something?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So that's about the only morale issue. Which I'm pretty sure. I mean, they signed the line just like the rest of us did. You had to expect that.
I could see how it could kind of be hard for them to understand with the
Yeah.
fighting over with,
Right.
and
Just send me home.
You're just doing, I hate to say the word mundane, but
Right.
those kinds of things, yeah. Okay, so the trip back to Hawaii. Now, you went right back to Hawaii. Then, were you given any leave home?
Yep, I went.
Okay.
Came home. I got on recruiter's assistance, so I worked with a recruiter when I got home. Getting other people into the Marine Corps.
So,
So
how
I got-
long did that duty? How long did you get to stay home and do that?
About
then?
30 days.
Okay.
So I was pretty fortunate. I enjoyed that time. After those 30 days, I went back to Hawaii. I volunteered to go back again to Saudi Arabia for just to help bring more stuff from the out of the field back to the port. So we did that roughly, 9 or 10 months.
Why did you volunteer to go back?
I think a lot of it at that time maybe is because I was really, really young, and I never left home a lot. So when I did leave home, I was really homesick, very, very much, and going back over there got my mind off things. And as long as I can keep busy, I don't have to think about stuff like that.
Would you say you were busier over there than you would have been in Hawaii?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Had more of a 24/7 kind of thing
Yeah,
over there,
more structured.
as opposed to just a garrison existence.
Right.
Okay.
So then you don't really have that much time to think about home, and
Mhm.
so it keeps me occupied.
Okay. When you originally went over, and I know when I was in, we got hostile fire pay.
Yeah.
Did you? Obviously, that applied during desert.
Shield and Desert Storm.
Desert Shield and Storm, but now how about when you came back?
Still the same.
Same thing?
Yeah,
Okay.
still got the hostile fire.
Okay. Okay, so you did your 9 or 10 months again in Saudi Arabia, and then did you go back to Hawaii?
Yeah, went right back to Hawaii. Stayed there for, maybe 6 months, 8 months, right around there. Took leave, went back to the States, got engaged, brought my wife back to Hawaii. I was probably engaged for, maybe 5 months. Brought her to Hawaii, got married, had my first son there.
How did she like Hawaii?
She loved it. She was homesick too, because she didn't have any family there. At least with me, I still had my Marine Corps buddies where she didn't have anybody. But I think she loved it.
Did you live on base and base housing, or?
When we first initially moved there, we moved into like temporary housing on base until we can get housing off base, because getting housing on base, it was like a year out. So we took the housing off base, lived out there for maybe 8 months, and then finally got base housing. And then we moved right back onto base, and it was pretty nice. Being on Kaneohe Bay, you're right there on the peninsula, right there by the ocean, airfield, just beautiful.
Okay, what was your normal routine there when you were back in Hawaii? And I know you're married, but obviously were you in the field a lot, or? A lot of
Yeah.
training exercises, or what?
A lot of
were you
training
doing?
exercises. We do a lot of time like at the Big Island, Hawaii, up at the mountains. We have a
Mhm.
big training place up there. Every day, PT in the morning. A lot of rifle range, small unit tactics, machine gun tactics, and drill and ceremony, inspections. The hurry up and wait. You'd swear that your first sergeant was up there in the building looking at all you guys standing up there in formation, waiting for one of you guys to fall out.
Now, living off base, what time would you have to report on base?
I'd usually get there about 7:15,
Okay.
so it wasn't too bad.
And your day would go until when, unless you were out in the field or something?
1630, 1700.
Okay.
And I lived, I don't know, within 5 minutes of, where my unit was at, so it was pretty nice.
Okay, now you're married in Hawaii, now you have a child.
Yeah.
Then what happens to you?
I'm getting close to my end of my enlistment there. I tried to re-enlist at that time because I wanted to stay in Hawaii, but that was when good old President Clinton was in, and they were doing all the base cutbacks, and my base was one of the bases that was supposed to be getting cut back. Well, they denied my re-enlistment.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I ended up sending my wife and my kid home, and they sent me all the way back to California to deprocess. Spent 2 weeks there, and then went home and started my life again.
Okay, so this it would have been in 98?
Yep.
Okay, so you went for 8 years, and all that time was, other than the Saudi Arabia and Desert Storm, Desert Shield, it all spent in Hawaii then? Right?
Well, I did 6 months in Okinawa too.
Okay. Talk about that, and what were you doing in Okinawa?
A lot of jungle training. Back to the running, the physical, conditioning. The jungle training was nice. I got a lot of. You get to go off base and do a lot more there. I got scuba qualified. Got to go hang out in town. My cousin was actually stationed there for, 2 months of the time that I was there, so we got to go hang out together. He was on Kadena Air Force Base, and I can't even remember where I was at. It was up on the infantry side, so we'd get to meet halfway and go hang out. And
Okay, so now you went to, your wife didn't go with you, right?
No.
Okay, and it was just, did your whole company go, or did you go as an individual?
No, we went as a battalion,
Oh, it's a whole
Yeah.
battalion. Okay,
and then they would just rotate our battalion out.
okay, did you do any time on the floating battalion at
No.
all? No.
Some of them did get to go to a float, and they went to Thailand, Philippines, but I didn't get to go on that one. I got stuck back in the rear, and while they were in Thailand and the Philippines just living it up, I got to at least get scuba qualified.
Okay,
So it wasn't all bad.
so that's nice. Okay, so you had basically Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Hawaii, in and out, and Okinawa.
Yeah.
They didn't let you re-up because force reductions. And now, what rank were you when you finished your tour?
E4,
Your
corporal.
E4. Okay, so then you got out in '98, and did you go back to Watervliet?
Oh yeah, yeah. Went
And
back home.
what did you do then?
Started in the tool and die. Did that for a little bit. I bet I wasn't home 2 months, and then I had the Marine Corps calling me again, trying to get me to re-enlist. But at that time, I was already, I call it a little butthurt. I was kind of mad because, I had to just move my family all the way from Hawaii back home. So I told them no, and then I just started my life again.
Oh, yeah, tool and die as an apprentice, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I enjoyed, when I first started it. But as I got to do it more and more, it was nerve-wracking. You're always pressured on, you got to have this job out by this time, and it's a cutthroat business. Everybody's trying to outbid the other person, so you're doing it for next to nothing, and just went from there.
So how long did you do that?
Till I joined up to the Guard.
Okay, and you joined the Guard when?
Roughly 01.
Okay, so you were out for about 3 years,
Yeah.
and then you joined the Guard. What prompted you to join the Guard?
I don't know. I was getting to that same old routine, back in the civilian life. Maybe I think I needed a little more structure in my life. Starting to get a little crazy, just needed some structure to get me going in the right direction where I needed to be. I like training people. I love what I do. You know, after I joined the Guard, I stayed in there. I did 2 deployments with the Guard. I did 6 straight years with nothing but, we call it pre-mobilization training assistant element, the PTAE team. Training soldiers to go to Iraq, Afghanistan, Liberia. So.
Okay, so you decided you needed the structure, John.
Yeah.
What did your wife think of your decision?
I think she thought it was good for me.
Okay. Now, did you have to go back through Army Basic?
No.
Or no.
No.
So you joined the Guard, and what unit did you get to then?
Echo Company 125.
Okay, so you went back in as an infantryman.
Yeah.
Did you come back as a corporal, or did they?
No, well, when I went back in for the Guard, I came back as an E4, but now I was a specialist.
Spec Corps then?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I think my second drill with my new unit, they told us that we were going to get deployed to Afghanistan, no, Iraq at that time, which was kind of shell shock. You know, not so much for me, but you know, worried my wife quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. So, what was your reaction though to now you're going to be going to Iraq as a grunt again, and
You know, I felt pretty good about it. I mean, I'm not a warmonger or nothing, but I was a little older in my years by then too. So, you know, maybe I don't know. I think I could think about stuff and do stuff a little bit better than some of the younger kids coming through there. I had a little bit more experience.
how when you came into the Guard, how would you compare your level of training, you know, that you had in the previous 8 years, to maybe someone who was in the Guard for 8 years as an infantryman?
Oh, it was like shell shock. When I first went to my first drill, I was in civilians, and because I didn't have my Army uniform yet, and that's when we had to be used. But as I'm standing up there on the top deck looking over the drill floor, and they're all lined up and they're calling out names, and I think they called out that day, it was like 6 soldiers that failed their urine exam. And I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, and what did I just join up? I almost felt like I joined up to maybe equivalent of a Boy Scout troop at that time. That's kind of what I felt like in the heat of the moment there. But as I stayed into it a little bit longer, and you could see how people progress and train, I got to realize, that they're just 2 different monsters. You have the Marine Corps, and you have the Army National Guard. They're a little bit more laid back. I wouldn't say they're not trained as much as the other. Maybe in some aspects, our BRM or rifle qual is totally different in the Marine Corps than it was in the Army. I mean, it's a lot easier in the Army than what it is in the Marine Corps. Their conditioning is different. I mean, I think the Marine Corps is probably a little bit harder physically and mentally.
Let me ask you a question. Why did you pick joining the Guard as an infantryman as opposed to just joining back into the Marine Reserve?
I think a lot of it at that time was because, I've been out for a few years already, being able to get back to my 3-mile run, my 20 pull-ups, my 80 sit-ups. I didn't think I could do it as much anymore. Where the Guard, where you have a 2-mile run, no pull-ups, and then you have your sit-ups and push-ups. So it was a little easier on the physical side for me.
Okay. So now you're in the Guard, your second drill, then they tell you you're going to be activated to deploy. Okay, then how long after that did you actually deploy or begin that process anyway?
Well, we pretty much began that process, I don't know, probably within the next drill. And then it took forever. I don't think we deployed until 04, 05. So, I mean, that's all we did was train like you're going to war, which was good because, now we're back to what I'm used to is, we're training all the time, every day you train like you're going to go to war, which you got to see a lot of the younger kids progress and actually become a very tight-knit unit.
And that training was all just on your weekly drills, right?
Yeah, we got a couple more extra, ATs in there, and then roughly about, I don't know, I'm guessing probably a year out.
When you say ATs, you mean annual training,
Yeah,
right?
annual trainings.
2-week blocks.
Yeah, so we usually get 2-week annual training, then we'll get another 2-week annual training. It ends up being all about the money, but as we get closer and closer, we get to do more and more training.
So then you were finally activated.
Finally activated, went to Fort Dix for our pre-mob training. Stayed there.
What did they consist of?
Right back to rifle qual, small unit tactics. I think they're kind of looking at the big picture, seeing how your unit operates, and then are they able to perform at a level where they need to be able to.
No, when you say your unit, was it just your company or
Just
the
a
whole
company.
battalion?
No, just a company.
Just the company one, okay.
Yeah.
So how long were you at Fort Dix?
I'm guessing 3 months, 3.5 months.
Okay.
Seemed like forever.
Training, yeah. And your wife's still in Watervliet, right?
Oh yeah, still at home. After our training, we got done. We got, I think, a 3 or 4 day pass. So we got to come home, see our family, and then we came back. Within that next week, they shipped us right over to Iraq.
Okay, so did you go right into Iraq or did you stop in Kuwait?
No, we
first?
flew into Kuwait and then flew into.
Explain that process then. Okay, now the whole company went over, right?
Yeah.
You landed in Kuwait, and what happened?
You get your mandatory classes, and there's some classes you had to
What
take.
were those classes?
Rules, regulations. We went over some of the culture, stuff for the Iraqi citizens that you might interact with. Rules, laws of war, and stuff like that. So we did that roughly. I want to say it took us about a week and a half before we got to leave out of there, and actually, they flew us right into Rustamaya.
Okay, now you get into Iraq, then just the whole company, and who are you assigned to?
The second ID.
The 2nd Infantry Division, okay. And how did the 2nd Infantry Division personnel react to National Guard guys coming in to fill them out? Or don't you know, at your level, you didn't really see that or hear that?
You kind of see it a little bit, being a younger soldier then, I didn't get to see the whole big picture of it, but it's just like with anything, the Marine Corps doesn't like the Army doesn't like the Reserve, and I'm sure the Reserve probably doesn't like the Guard. For some reason, that's just how it is, and I don't ever foresee that change. I think it changes as the longer we were there, and once they seen, that we spill the same blood as they do, then they accept us more.
Okay, so as your company, you filled one of the company slots in a battalion then?
Yeah.
Now, do you know if you replaced another National Guard or Reserve unit, or?
I don't know. I don't even know.
Okay. Okay, so now you're in Iraq. Explain what you did.
When we got there, we were assigned to go to the different Iraqi police stations and actually train the Iraqi police on, how to be a cop, how to, go out and search. We trained them on medical, a little bit of bomb disposal, how to. That was right around the time when they had the bat and hide system for the, taking their pictures, fingerprints, being able to document all of the prisoners of war or enemy combatants, what they would find. So that was pretty interesting in itself. Working with Iraqi police and trying to train them to get them to, understand, because you're working through a translator. And then it always seemed like to me is like their attention span would run for about 15 minutes. And then after that, you kind of lost them. So you would actually, you train for 15 minutes, you might change it and do something else to keep them occupied. And then you go back to train them for another 15 minutes. They just got sidetracked very easily.
Did they learn well, though?
I think the majority of them learned pretty well. You're always going to have those select few that just can't get right.
And their performance and follow-up was okay, or?
To an extent. I mean, you always.
Wouldn't you know, would you then leave and go train somebody else?
Well, we had like 3 or 4 different stations, so we would bounce to this station, and we would train, and then the next day we'd go to this station, we would train. So it always, we were never going to the same place, on a set pattern, so they never knew when we were coming.
Okay.
You always get to the point where you're trying to train them, but yet you're still trying to do a job too, where you got to go out there and kick the doors in. You got to go out there and you set on an IED for 10 or 12 hours, or picking up casualties or stuff like that. So I mean, sometimes you would take maybe 1 or 2 and stick them in your vehicle and just take them with you. And
So you would be giving them some real OJT then too?
Yes.
Yeah. So while you were training, you were also doing those things like house searches and?
Oh, yeah.
and like that?
Yeah, we always tried to have at least a couple IPs with us. That way, they can get used to how we operate, and then so they can see how they should operate.
What would trigger a search of a house?
Random,
Yeah.
all random. At least for us, it was random. Something looked out of the ordinary, or maybe you just wanted to stop and you're going down the road and there was a storefront. We would just stop. You have your translator come up, knock on the door. We call it like a soft knock, and then you just go in there and search his whole house.
And what was the Iraqi civilians' reaction to that?
The majority of them were actually pretty good. I think they were just pretty happy to see us. I mean, at that time when we were there, we did a lot of work in, they called it Salmon Pot, and I pretty much called it the Wild Wild West. I mean, there was never a day that you went through there when somebody wasn't shooting at you, or, an IED wasn't going off somewhere. So seeing us there and being able to control some of that, I mean, I think it had a pretty good impact, and they were very happy to see us.
So how long were you there for then? This deployment?
Roughly about 15, 16 months.
15, 16 months. And that's basically what you were doing the whole time?
The whole time. Yeah, it was pretty interesting.
Now, towards the end of your tour, did you feel things were getting better or worse or than they were when you first started, or?
I don't know. Toward the end of the tour, to me, it almost seemed like they were maybe getting a little bit better, but the bad people that were still out there, they were getting better too.
Okay.
As we got better, they got better. They got better at shooting mortars into our fob. They got better at blowing us up. I'm sure in the big picture, like in the coin environment, I mean, we're trying to make it safe for them and teach them and train them how, to make their people safe. But, when to me, if you're killing all these bad guys, I mean, who do you think's the first ones to go? Probably the not so bright ones.
Yeah, the dumb ones.
Yeah, the dumb ones are going first. So then all you got left is the smart ones, and they got pretty good at what they do.
Okay. Yeah. Did your unit take many casualties?
I think we lost 6 guys out of roughly 110.
How would you characterize the morale of the company while they were there in the year?
You had its ups and downs. I mean, we lost, I think, 3 soldiers at one time when an IED blew up their vehicle, but that's to be expected. But all in all, we were a very, very tight group. I mean, if somebody got blowed up or we lost 3 or 4, our commander always seemed to work with the second ID guys to be able to have a deliberate op to actually go out in that area where our guys got blown up and actually
Payback, huh?
do a little payback and do a little house-to-house searching and draw some of those bad people out. So it made us feel good.
Okay, that's good. I never heard that before, so that's interesting.
It's probably one of the best commanders I've ever had.
Was that okay? Okay, so you were there that tour of 15 months, came home.
Yep, came home. I stayed with 125 for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years after that.
Where were you based out of? What armory were you based out of?
Big Rapids.
Big Rapids.
Yeah.
Okay, so you drove from Watervliet to Big Rapids.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a pretty good drive.
Yeah.
At first, I was kind of thinking to myself, I'm like, man, this is a long way to drive just to go to drill. But after, you know, being with those guys and as tight as we got, I mean, it was kind of like a second home.
Okay, so you got home and you stayed with 125 for what, 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, roughly. Yeah, my commander got me into the PTAE job. You know, I did that for
What job?
that pre-mobilization training assistant element where you train the soldiers going to war. The Guard tried to get to the point where instead of going to the MOB site and doing all your training there, they tried to do it a year out to where we trained our own. Then when we got to the MOB site, it was more like collective tasks where they just looked at the big picture
Okay.
instead of doing all the little tasks. So it sped our time up at the MOB sites.
And did that work?
I think it worked tremendously. I was sorry to see it go. I mean, the PTAE in Michigan are down to like 4 or 5 guys now.
Okay.
And when I was in, we were roughly 30, 40 strong.
So you were doing that then with other units that were,
Yeah, all the units in Michigan that were deploying.
so you would, if when your drill weekends wouldn't be spent with your unit, you would go to other units and do that training? Or-
Yeah, I hardly spent any time with my unit at that point. I was working full time with, you know, underneath the tag and the A tag and just going around and training soldiers up at Fort Custer or up at Camp Grayling.
Okay, so you were, now you were full-time with the Guard, right?
Right.
So you didn't go back to a civilian job?
No, I did that all the way up until we went to this Afghanistan this last time.
Okay, so you did that, and then you left the 125.
Yeah, left the 125. I switched over and joined a transportation company. Because the 125, I was still in E4. I'd already been in quite a few years already. All of our slots were frozen. Couldn't get any promotions. So I pretty much, we call it jump ship, and switched my MOS. Went to school and became an 88 Mike to be able to, you know, get some career progression
And 88 Mike is what?
in transportation.
Okay, so did you have to go back on, how did you get your qualified for that MOS?
So they sent us, there was a, I think it was a 4-week school there at Fort Custer.
Okay,
And they train you to drive all these different vehicles, and then once you're done with that, and I go back to the other unit, 1461st, I think it was. Did that for, I don't know, roughly 2 years, and then I switched over to the 507th, took another promotion here, and I've been here ever since.
okay. And did you have to change MOSs when you came here, or?
No, I still kept my same OS. I seem to have a little bit better, you know, career progression in this one. I definitely like the 11 Bravo MOS a lot better. You get to do a lot more training compared to being in a HHC or FSC company like this, to where we're supporting the HHC and, you know, the surrounding companies around
Yeah.
us. So it's a little bit different.
Okay, but you were still full-time with the Guard,
Yes.
right? Okay. I'm just looking at, see what kind of, may have changed tapes, but are you keeping track of the time?
Yeah, I think we've got.
About 5-10 minutes, I think. So, okay, so now you came here to the 507. Did you come here just before they were gonna deploy, or?
No, I probably was here maybe a year or two before we deployed.
Okay.
You know, I belonged to the unit, but I was doing so much training with the PTAE that they hardly ever seen me.
Okay,
But once we got into the deployment cycle, which I was helping train our unit while belonging to the unit, so it was pretty interesting because I already knew the other side of the picture because I'm the trainer, and then now I'm going back into the spot where I'm the trainer, but yet I'm going through the training.
you're gonna be a trainee as
Yeah.
well, yeah, yeah.
Which is a little different. I mean, it kind of had its, you know, bonuses out of it.
Yeah.
But, and then I ran that job all the way up until we picked up our Title 10 orders.
Okay, now you're with this unit, and you're gonna deploy to Afghanistan. What process did you go through then?
Right back, you know, they ship us out to Texas to the MOB site. You know, we spent a lot less time this time.
Where in Texas? Fort Hood?
No, it wasn't Fort Hood. What was the other one?
Fort Bliss?
Fort Bliss.
Down
Yep.
by El Paso?
Yep. Yep, so we did Fort Bliss, and our process of going through that, it was a lot less. You know, we had all of our tasks, you know, our soldier tasks completed before we got to the mob site.
And what tasks were those?
We'll say like land nav, all the mandatory briefings, shooting, BRM. We had to train them on a lot of small unit tactics like your 12 battle drills, house searching, searching cars, running a EPOW site, all kinds of hasty checkpoints.
Okay, so in your first deployment with the Guard, those are all the things you would do at that time you were in Fort Dix.
Right.
And now because of the training, all those activities were accomplished prior to
Right.
going to there. Okay, so then what did you have to concentrate on at Bliss then?
Really, all we had to concentrate on there is we had a few more mandatory tasks, like some briefings that they'd send us through, and a lot of it was too is doing convoys. We would do our convoys, but they would actually, their OCs would ride either with us or behind us, and they were pretty much just kind of grading us and making sure we were able to complete the tasks. We did them at home station prior, but now they're the final graders saying, they're blessing us off on it, saying we're good to go.
Would they simulate ambushes and IED explosions?
Ambushes, IED, yeah,
Okay.
all of it.
Okay.
Really, really good training.
Okay. Then you went to Afghanistan. When basically did you get to Afghanistan?
2012.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was right around 2012.
So where do you go in Afghanistan? When do you?
We went right into, Camp Leatherneck, Anbar province. And we were stationed there.
And not Anbar province is in Iraq, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, Anbar. Am I thinking,
Was
start
it
with
in
an H?
Helmedad or
Yeah.
something like that?
Helmand province.
Helmand.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
But we were stationed there and,
Now, I presume Camp Leatherneck was a Marine thing? Did you
Yes, it was.
Did you have some deja vu?
Yeah. Yeah, that was a little different. Being in the Guard for so long and then going around and then there was frickin' Marines everywhere. A nice base, but there was a crap load of Marines. I'd say probably 70% Marines, maybe 30% Army and Guard. It was interesting. We did a lot of support. We supported the other engineer companies. We ran a lot of convoys all around Afghanistan. They kept us pretty busy. We didn't lose anybody out of our company at that time. Some of our subordinates lost some with IEDs. One of my trucks got hit, and I think they got 4 wounded. I pulled 4 wounded out, and we only sent one home out of the 4.
Okay.
And the other ones stayed there and were able to complete the mission.
Okay, so, and what, how long was that deployment, a year or?
Year.
1 year.
year.
Okay, and is that all that you did during that period of time, was just run convoys?
Run
and,
convoys.
Okay,
I was in charge of the security, and then a friend of mine, he's in charge of all the trucks. And
what would the security consist of?
we usually ran 5 gun trucks. Our front truck, which would be me, would be the front truck. We'd run mine rollers up front.
Okay, define what a gun truck is.
They call them MRAPs or Max Pro. So they're the upgraded version. We don't usually use the Humvees anymore, where they have the almost looks like a boat bottom where they're V'd up. So when you take an IED hit, it actually deflects off there. A lot bigger vehicle. So we ran those. We ran 2 up front.
And you called it a gun truck, so what kind of armament did you have on it?
Oh, with the bottom, there's double plating on the bottom. I mean, all around, if you had glass on it, the glass is probably 8 to 12 inches thick. It's all bulletproof glass. It'd be very, very good armor.
In armament, what kind of
armament,
weapons?
we ran-
What could you deploy from that
Anything.
platform?
We could.
What
we
did you
ran
usually have?
50 cal up front, 50 cal on the back, and then the rest would be 240s. No Mark 19s and no saws. Sometimes we'd keep a saw next to if you had a 240, in case your 240 went down, where you can actually pick up your saw and stick it up out of the turret and still be able to fire it. Mark 19 wasn't really that good over there because you get in the mountain ranges, and when the wind picks up, it likes to push those rounds around. They don't usually hit where you're trying to aim at.
Okay. And Mark 19 is what?
The grenade launcher?
Okay. We'll shoot the 40 millimeter?
Yeah, 40 mic grenades.
Okay. So you'd have usually 3 or 4 gun trucks in the convoy?
Usually right around 5 minimum.
Oh, 5. And
Yeah.
how big would the convoy be? How many vehicles would be there, and how would the gun trucks be placed?
Usually we'd run, I don't know, maybe 15 line haulers, and then I'd have 2 gun trucks up in the front with a mine roller in the front, another set of mine rollers behind that, in case one of the mine rollers got hit or blown up. That way the other guy can take over its spot. And then I'd have 1 truck in the very rear, and then I would just space them out evenly into the middle.
Explain what a mine roller is.
It's a big old contraption that would attach onto your truck. It's all hydraulic driven now, and it has these big giant wheels on it. There's probably maybe 10 or 15 of them wide, about the length. It was probably a little over the length of your vehicle. And you could put down pressure on them, and as you drove, it would set off any of the landmines that you would drive across. That would set it off and blow those up before it would blow you up.
So they would blow up any contact kind of mines,
Right.
right?
Right.
Let's change the tape.
Yeah.
We'll change the tape. Okay, so how far ahead of the vehicle would those mine rollers extend?
Anywhere they were adjustable to, so you could adjust them out. You can keep them tight to the vehicle, which were roughly 3 or 4 feet out in front of the vehicle, or you can stretch them out to roughly 6 to 8 feet, and you'd always kind of change it, every time you went out. That way they could never, pattern you, and set a mine up to where you have a crush wire where you'd hit it with the mine roller, and then all they would have to do is stick their IED back, whatever the length of your roller is. So when you hit it with the mine roller, then it blows up your truck. So if you keep moving that adjustment back and forth, they can never really pinpoint that down.
Okay. And just during so you would have two mine trucks with the mine rollers leading the convoy.
Yeah.
And in your year's experience, how many mines were activated that way?
In my years of experience, probably almost every mine that we've probably hit, that especially in 05, 06, where we didn't run the mine rollers, we would have saved a lot of lives.
Yeah.
I mean, out of the 6 guys, we probably would have saved 4 of them. Where we would have took the mine roller out compared to taking the whole vehicle out.
Right.
Now this last time we were there, my 3rd gun truck, which didn't have mine rollers on it, hit an IED. But this was after we were going, it's real hilly in some of the spots. And you're always trained, I train my drivers, you stay in the tracks of the vehicle in front of you. And they went outside that track maybe 10 feet and hit a mine and blew the whole back part of the truck off.
Okay. But the mine rollers were very successful on the
Very
roads.
successful.
Then, yeah. Okay. What would the activation of with the exploding of the mine, would it crater the road so it make the road impassable, or?
To an extent, I mean, if you were on a hard ball, it would make it impassable. But a lot of the driving we did out there was, probably half on hardball, half of it was going through the desert, where you would, you look at your Blue Force tracker, which is that computer inside your truck, or it has like a GPS map, as you will, and you would just follow that out, and you'd make your own trail. So it was pretty neat.
Now during that, how many convoys during that year? Now you were responsible for security.
Right.
Did you go on all the convoys, or would you just get the security detachment organized and?
No, I went on every convoy.
And how many convoys would you say you've been on?
In Afghanistan, maybe 100, 120.
Okay, in that year period of
Right.
time. So
I tried to volunteer for more.
about 10 a month then, right?
Yeah.
And you were you hauling to any one specific sector of Afghanistan, or all over the country, or?
A lot of it was to Kandahar,
Okay.
You know, we do a lot of clips over to Kandahar, and then, you know, once they started, you started seeing the bases start downsizing, so everybody's shutting down the little bases, and then, you know, the big bases were staying open, so then we would find ourselves going out to all over. You know, I think I was maybe a couple miles from the Iranian border at one time, up in the Hindu Kush Mountains. I mean, very, very beautiful place. But yeah, we got to do a lot of traveling toward the end.
So you didn't really have any predictable run like you didn't do
No.
every Tuesday you went from
No.
A to B? Okay.
That's one thing we're good about, is the predictability. We
Yeah.
got pretty keen on that.
Okay. What kind of interactions did you have with the local population while you were there?
A lot more this time. I mean, I made their interpreter ride with my truck in the front truck.
You were, excuse me, as the convoy security
Commander.
commander, were you always in the front truck, or would you vary your position?
Yeah. No, I would always stay in the front. I'm the type of guy that, you know, I like to lead from the front. I think the soldiers respect you more. I mean, if you're willing to put yourself in harm's way, I don't know, we got along a lot better that way. Then to me, I could control it. I get myself up front and have another NCO in the rear, then we can control the whole convoy. So it went very well. But interaction we had a lot more interaction.
Was it positive or negative?
I'd say the majority of it was probably positive. You know, sometimes you run into a couple negatives. I mean, you know, stuff happens over there. You just never know. But the majority of it was pretty good.
What was your impression of the mission, our mission, your unit's mission there, and the coalition's mission? And do you feel we accomplished a lot or not?
I think in order to, you know, people look at it, to me, you know, like, I think we're accomplishing the mission, but it takes a lot more time than what people think it will. I mean, you can't change something like that, you know, within a few years. To me, those people have been fighting for hundreds of years.
Right.
And you know, you look at the Russians that went in there, and that didn't work out very well for those guys. That's something that you know, we should have kept at and should keep at. To me, you know, you look back at Iraq, where, you know, all the blood that we spilt there, and then, you know, we pull out, and pretty much the day we pull out, it just turns right back over to what you see in today.
Just another name for it, the
Right.
same old bullshit.
Yeah, which is disgraceful to us,
Yeah.
you know, as the military, because now we've given it all back to them for what? You know, we spent all these lives for pretty much nothing. Where if you would have left a frickin' footprint there, you know, just like with any other war that we have, we always usually leave a footprint somewhere. If we had left a footprint there, you probably wouldn't end up in the spot where we're at today. At least that's what I think.
Yeah, well, you have a very, very valid point. How would you consider the morale of your unit while you were there?
A little different this time. You know, I'm working more with headquarters, higher echelon people. I got a lot of younger kids. Hard to keep morale this time to a positive state. The mission load was a little lighter than what I'm used to, so I tried volunteering for more missions to be able to do more stuff. I found that if you can keep the kids or the young soldiers employed more, they have a less habit of getting themselves in trouble or, you know, thinking about stuff they probably shouldn't be thinking about.
Okay.
So definitely a little harder this time.
Well, and what was the reaction? Now you were there, what, 12, 13?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now it became a matter of our policy that we're gonna get out of there in 14.
Right.
And what was the reaction to the guys there? You know, you always hear this thing, I don't want to be the last guy killed, you know,
Right.
before we leave. Did that affect a troop performance or morale, or?
I mean, it might have affected a small group of people, but while we're there, you know, I try to keep the soldiers mission focused, you know, to keep their mind at the task at hand, not to worry about what all the politicians and the other crap is, what's going on. You know, we're there to do a job, and I'm there to bring them back alive. Mm-hmm. And I need them to have their, their game face on every day that we, go to work. So, I mean, you always had a few select. It's usually the younger kids. You know, I found that as long as I've been in the military, the younger population compared to you know, when I grew up, their mentalities changed a little bit. You know, now we're into the gaming. You know, some kids, they play video games their whole freaking life. Well, I didn't have video games. I had Pong. That was it. You had Pong, or you're gonna go ride your bicycle.
And you had a stick and a ball.
Yeah, stick and a ball, and you can't have too much fun with a stick and a ball.
Uh,
So, I mean, it's changed a lot, and I think a lot of it is too is, you know, I've tried to make my kids or give them a better life than what I've had, you know, and I think maybe at that point I should have been more strict on them, and maybe had them respect more of what they get instead of expecting it to be handed to them. That's what I see now.
Okay, what did your wife feel about your deployment to Afghanistan?
By now she's pretty much, you know, she doesn't like it. I know she doesn't like it. She likes me being in the service, and she knows what we're doing is good. But now, you know, we have a young daughter at the time, so it's a lot harder on her this time.
Oh yeah, well, essentially being a single parent for a
Yeah.
year. How did you keep in communication with your family while you were there?
Emails, and when I was there, I bought we call it a Haji phone or Afghani phone. I bought a phone over there, and I just paid for minutes. I mean, it wasn't actually too bad.
Okay. So how often would you call home?
Usually once or twice a week.
Okay.
Unless we were on mission. Sometimes our missions would go for, you know, we might be outside the wire for a week, and you know, I try to call her when we get to the next base, but she always knew if I didn't call, we were busy.
Okay. Now, when you were on these convoys, how long would they normally last?
Our longest one was probably maybe a week and a half, 2
Okay.
weeks, but usually, you know, we do short runs. Sometimes we'd go out, it'd be 3 days. Go out, we'd have a day for, you know, downloading, downtime for the soldiers, and then another day for loading up.
So you would, it'd take you a day to get to your destination,
Right.
and then at your destination, which was usually another forward operating base, or what? Okay.
Yeah.
So did you ever have any where you had to stop at night and camp out? And,
Even when we would do that, you know, we'd find ourselves and we'd have to do that. We could always stop because there's all kinds of little fobs all over the place.
okay.
So we would camp out there. And,
So you would always camp someplace close to friendlies then?
oh yeah, yeah, and you know, and it's just like Iraq to me. I mean, it's probably a little colder in Afghanistan because we'd get up by the mountains, and I actually seen snow there, which was pretty neat. But I mean, when you find yourself sleeping outside your truck on your, you know, cot or on the ground, it gets pretty cold when you're trying to keep your sleeping bag on you and hop back into the truck because you don't want to put your clothes on yet. But
Did you have much interaction with the Afghan army?
very little,
Okay.
very little. A lot of it.
How about other allied forces? Did you have much interaction?
Oh yeah,
with them?
Italians, yeah, a lot of different allied forces. Leatherneck, you know, the one side was, we'll say the Marine Corps side of it, but on the other side you had the British, the Italians, and you could drive over to that side. It was all one big base, but you know, one side was U.S. and the other side was all the other coalition forces. So we'd always go over there because they had the cool stuff with their PX.
Did they have any wine?
No.
The Italians didn't have any wine
No.
at their PX? No?
No, because I'm sure my guys would have found it.
Yeah, okay.
They were pretty good about that stuff.
That was, any spirits come in care packages?
Oh yeah, I mean, which my soldiers were pretty good. You know, I laid the law down to them from the get-go. I said, hey, you know, I can't have you out drinking because you never know when we have to go. And I actually had a soldier turn in all of his liquor to me that was sent in a care package, which I was kind of amazed. I kind of expected it, but I was kind of amazed that he actually did it. And he turned it in, and we just dump it out and, you know, drive on.
Okay.
You know, I don't have to tell the higher ups that one of my soldiers turned in some liquor. I just dump it out and we'll just act like it never even happened.
So your tour wound down. Was your unit replaced with another unit? Did you have to do some handoff training? Or
Yeah, we did a little
when
bit
you
of
left?
handoff training. Yeah, that was a little different. You know, I accumulated with the security commander. I accumulated a lot of extra rounds and, you know, G-Wiz stuff. We ran 2 Crow systems, the remote control weapon systems on our trucks. So, I mean, they actually made out pretty good.
Okay. How did you acquire the extra stuff?
We just got some good soldiers in our company that seem to acquire stuff like that.
Okay.
When you're in need, I mean, those, you know, if you got some good soldiers, they'll get it for you.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So how was your homecoming when you came home then?
Very, very good. I actually got together with the unit and I had Colt make us some 45 pistols. I think I sold like 32 of them, where they're actually engraved on the side. We only paid like 800 something bucks, but they're all engraved, stainless. They had our unit logo on the grips, and so.
Oh, kind of commemorative pistols?
Yeah, commemorative pistol. So I get picked up from the airport. We had our little homecoming there, and then, you know, everybody just wants to go and wants to go back with their family. So I made my wife stop at the pistol store so I can pick up my pistol on the way home to my homecoming, which I don't really remember a lot of that anyways. I mean, not after drinking for, you know, 12, 13 months. Yeah.
Where did you land back in the States and when you came in?
Kalamazoo.
Kalamazoo?
Yeah.
Okay, right there.
Which was nice. Then we had our homecoming at I want to say the high school right there in Kalamazoo. It was pretty nice. Short and sweet,
Yeah.
the way we like them.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah.
And then you got back and now you're just, now you're still working full-time for the Guard?
Nope.
No?
Now I'm just doing guard role.
Okay. And what are you doing?
Well, when one of my trucks got hit in Afghanistan, I tore a ligament off my shoulder.
Okay.
So I had surgery when I got back. So dealing with that, and then now I'm back to work, kind of semi-work. You know, I still have a lot of issues with my shoulder and little PTSD going on, and you know, trying to get back to reality. I've been struggling this time a little bit more
Okay.
than what I have, but trying to get back into the civilian role and be there for the family and with the kids.
That's great. Well, hey, you know, I think you're the first guy. No, you got your Marine Combat Action Ribbon, the Marine equivalent of the CIB, right?
Right.
Now you got the CIB, and what's the other one you get?
CAB, Combat Action Badge.
Yeah, so you got all three.
Yeah.
You're the first guy I talked to that I interviewed that got all that made this clean sweep.
Yeah,
So-
I was starting to get kind of pissed off there toward the end because, you know, I did 3 tours, and then we got to close to the end. I'm getting older now, and I'm like, I need to go to Afghanistan somewhere. You know, I need to get that last one in. Well, now it might be Syria.
I don't know. Too bad on the CIB, so you have a star on it. But,
Yeah.
well.
I should have got a start from the first time because, I mean, that was a different one when we went to, you know, Desert Shield, Desert Storm.
Yeah.
And now, because this was OEF, OIF, I should have got a start that time, but they don't think of it that way because you got Marine Corps and then you got Army.
Right.
Two different things.
If you were in the Army, you would have got it.
Yeah, I'd have been good to go then.
Yeah. Well, hey, thank you very much for interviewing. It was a pleasure, and best of luck to you.
Thanks, sir.
Take care.
Thank you for your service.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.